we are living in an age of the great distraction. While the eyes of the world are glued to the green and red candles of the stock market, while millions argue over Bitcoin ETFs or the latest tweets from tech billionaires, a dangerous legal mechanism has been triggered in silence right at the heart of Washington's power structure. It is a mechanism that threatens not just your portfolio, but the most fundamental property rights of every citizen. A few days ago, the media hailed a new executive order as the dawn of the crypto age. They spoke of freedom, of America taking the lead in financial technology. But they didn't read the text. Or worse, they read it and chose silence. I have spent the last 72 hours dissecting every sentence, every word, every legal term in this 80-page document. And what I found is not liberation. It is a trap. Everyone is looking at Bitcoin, but that is just the shiny object used to conceal the real target. There is a second asset mentioned in the same order, camouflaged under the term monetary metals. That asset is gold. And the plan for gold isn't $2,700 or $3,000 an ounce. The target figure, carefully calculated to salvage the collapsing American financial empire, is $20,000 per ounce. But here is the most terrifying part. To reach that price, to wipe out the colossal $37 trillion national debt, the government cannot allow you, the average citizen, to hold that gold. They need it. All of it. And the language in this new order mirrors, almost word for word, the infamous Executive Order 6102 issued by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1933. Do you think gold confiscation is a relic of the past? A story for dusty history books? Think again. What I am about to reveal in this video will prove that history is not just repeating. It is being upgraded with a scale and speed that is far more terrifying. We are standing on the precipice of the greatest wealth transfer in human history, and if you do not understand these new rules, you will be the one paying for it. Let's begin to decode the truth they are trying to hide. To understand the future, we must look through the deception of the present. Let me ask you a simple question. How much is the US government's gold worth? You'll look at the tickers and say $2,700, right? Wrong. That is the market price, the price you and I pay. But on the official books of the US Treasury, the entity that holds the real power, the price of gold is not $2,700. It is $42.22. You heard that correctly. $42.22. This is the statutory price established in 1973 under Public Law 93-110, and it has never been updated. For over 50 years, while the world changed and inflation ravaged the dollar, this number has remained frozen in the financial statements. Why? Why would the US government maintain such an absurd valuation? The US holds 8,133 tons of gold reserves, roughly 261 million ounces. At $42.22, this massive hoard is valued at a measly $11 billion on paper. That number is laughably small compared to the national debt. But if revalued at the current market price of $2,700, that same gold is worth over $700 billion. The difference between $11 billion and $700 billion, that valuation gap of nearly $690 billion, is not an accounting oversight. It is a strategic weapon. It is a financial nuclear button that the Treasury can press at any moment. Simply by passing a law to mark that gold to market, or higher than market, the government can instantly conjure hundreds of billions, even trillions of dollars in equity on its balance sheet, without collecting a single dime in taxes from you. But $2,700 is still not enough. With a crushing $37 trillion debt load, $700 billion is a drop in the bucket. They need a number much, much larger. Let's go deep into the legal text of the order. Do not let the flashy title, Strengthening American Leadership in Digital Financial Technology, fool you. That is the cover. When I ran keyword analysis software through the 80 pages, the word gold and the phrase monetary metals appeared a total of 14 times. But it's not the frequency, it's the context that is terrifying. Look at Section 4, subsection A. The text reads, Strategic reserve assets may be revalued periodically to reflect their contribution to national economic stability and debt sustainability. Stop and think about that. Revalued for debt sustainability. They are telling us straight to our faces. When the debt becomes unsustainable, which it is now, they have the authority to change the value of reserve assets, gold, to save the sinking ship. This is an admission that they will use gold to bail out the debt. But it doesn't stop there. Section 5, subsection D is the knife at the throat. This section authorizes the Secretary of the Treasury to implement mandatory acquisition of strategic assets from private holders at valuations determined by the Treasury during times of national economic emergency. Mandatory acquisition. That is the polite, bureaucratic euphemism for confiscation. And notice the phrase, at valuations determined by the Treasury. They do not say, at market price. They say at the price they decide. This means if the market price is $5,000, but they decide the fair value is $3,000, you will have to accept it. They have built the cage. The legal framework is complete. The authority has been granted. The concepts of national security and economic emergency are the get-out-of-jail-free cards that allow them to bypass every constitutional barrier regarding property rights. If you think they wouldn't dare do it because of public backlash, you have forgotten the painful lesson of 1933. History does not lie, only human memory is short. Let's travel back to April 5th, 1933. America was in the grip of the Great Depression. People lost faith in banks. They withdrew paper money and exchanged it for gold to hide. The government faced a collapse of the payment system. President Roosevelt did not ask for charity. He issued Executive Order 6102. This order declared that it was illegal for U.S. citizens to own gold, except for a small amount of jewelry and collectible coins. The penalty for non-compliance? 10 years in federal prison and a $10,000 fine. Remember, $10,000 in 1933 is equivalent to nearly $250,000 today. A destructive penalty. Americans, out of fear and naive trust in their government, lined up outside banks to surrender their gold. The government paid them $20.67 for every ounce, the official price at the time. The government collected thousands of tons of gold from the hands of the people into the Treasury. And then, the greatest betrayal in history occurred. Just 9 months later, in January 1934, after securing the majority of the nation's gold, Roosevelt signed the Gold Reserve Act, officially raising the price of gold from $20.67 to $35 an ounce. Overnight, the value of the government's gold hoard skyrocketed by 69%. The government created a massive profit from the very gold they had just forced citizens to sell at a discount. The result? The dollar was devalued by 40%. The law-abiding citizens were robbed of 40% of their purchasing power. Their wealth was transferred to the government's pockets to save the banking system, and gold ownership for Americans remained illegal for 41 years, until 1974. The scenario for 2025 is no different from 1933, only the scale is larger. Instead of deflationary depression, we face a debt crisis and stagflation. But their solution remains identical. Confiscate the real asset, revalue it to erase debt, and let the people bear the consequences of currency devaluation. Trump's order is the digital clone of Order 6102. Why do I keep mentioning the number $20,000? This is not a figure pulled out of thin air for clickbait. It is the result of a cold, hard, mathematical calculation designed to salvage the U.S. balance sheet. Look at the big picture. U.S. national debt is currently $37 trillion. The debt-to-GDP ratio has exceeded 130%. Interest payments on this debt have surpassed $1 trillion annually, more than the entire defense budget. The United States is technically bankrupt. They cannot pay the debt through taxes. The people cannot bear more taxes. They cannot cut spending. Society would riot. The only path left is a monetary reset. To do this, they need to prove to foreign creditors, like China, Japan, Saudi Arabia, that the dollar still has value. The only way to restore confidence is to peg the dollar to a hard asset. Currently, the US M2 money supply is around $21 trillion. A classic economic rule, used during the gold standard, is that you need at least 20% to 40% of the money supply backed by gold to create confidence. Let S do a reverse calculation. If the US wants to back 100% of the monetary base with gold to completely replace debt, the gold price would need to exceed 50,000 Oz. That is too extreme. But what if they just need to create a counter-asset of about 5 trillion to balance the debt and restore faith? The US has 261 million ounces of gold. At $20,000 Oz, America's gold hoard becomes worth over 5.2 trillion. This number is large enough to recapitalize the Federal Reserve, large enough to wipe out the majority of bad debt, and large enough to reset a new monetary system. This is not about making you rich, this is about the government saving itself, and for this plan to work, they must own the gold before the price hits $20,000. If you own the gold, you become wealthier and more powerful than the government. They will never let that happen. The government won't send police to kick down your door tomorrow demanding your gold. They are smarter than that. They will use the boiling frog strategy, raising the heat slowly so you don't jump out until it's too late. Based on my analysis, this process will unfold in 4 specific phases. Phase 1, voluntary acquisition, 2025-2026. The government will launch a media campaign about patriotism. Sell your gold to the government to protect the dollar. They will offer to buy your gold at market price, perhaps adding a small premium. This is the soft phase. Weak hands or those needing cash will sell. Phase 2, mandatory reporting. The Treasury will issue new regulations under the guise of anti-money laundering, AML. Anyone owning physical gold, whether bought from a dealer or stored privately, must declare their identity and quantity. Gold dealers will be forced to hand over past client lists. Your privacy will be abolished. If you don't declare, you become a tax criminal. Phase 3, punitive taxation. Once they have the list, they won't confiscate immediately. They will tax, a special windfall profits tax on precious metals, or a wealth tax on gold holdings. The goal is to make holding gold expensive and painful. Many will give up at this stage and sell back to the government to avoid the taxes. Phase 4, emergency confiscation. The trap snaps shut, 2027. A crisis erupts. It could be a bond default, war, or a dollar collapse. The government declares a national emergency. They trigger the clause in Trump's order. Every citizen must surrender their gold within 90 days. When the dust settles and gold is revalued at $20,000 Oz, society will be divided into 2 distinct classes. The losers. These are the people who complied with the confiscation order. They sold their gold for $4,000 and received paper dollars. After gold hits $20,000, the dollars they hold will be devastated by hyperinflation. Prices for food, energy, and housing will rise 5x, 10x. The money they received becomes worthless. They lost their real asset and received paper scraps. These are the bank savers, the retirees living on fixed pensions. Their purchasing power evaporates. An entire middle class will be pushed down into poverty. The winners. First, the US government and the Federal Reserve. They wipe their debt clean and hold the planet's most valuable reserve. Next, foreign governments like China, Russia, India, nations that have been silently accumulating thousands of tons of gold over the last decade. They will become the new financial superpowers. And finally, a small group of smart individuals, people like you, if you know how to act right now. People who saw this script coming, people who did not blindly comply, and people who had a plan to protect their assets in places where the US government's hand cannot reach. We have roughly 12 to 24 months before the door closes. This is the golden window for you to act. Here are 3 specific steps to transform yourself from a potential victim into a winner. Step 1. Jurisdictional diversification. This is the most critical step. If your gold is in the US, it is within reach of the confiscation order. You need to move a portion of your wealth to countries with strong property rights laws that are not subservient to the US. Switzerland and Singapore are the last 2 fortresses. Look for allocated and segregated storage. This means you own specific physical bars with specific serial numbers, not sitting on a bank's balance sheet. If the US government orders a seizure, Switzerland and Singapore have the legal right to refuse. Step 2. Exploit the Numismatic Loophole. In the 1933 order, there was an exception: gold coins having a recognized special value to collectors. Wealthy people back then bypassed the law by buying pre-1933 gold coins instead of bullion bars. Today, this strategy remains effective. Own gold coins minted before 1933, like St. Gordon's or Liberty Heads. They are considered historical artifacts, not monetary gold, and thus have a high probability of being exempt from a new confiscation order. Step 3. Privacy and decentralized transactions. Minimize your digital footprint. When buying gold, if possible and legal, use cash for smaller transactions. Avoid leaving detailed purchase records in centralized databases. The goal is not tax evasion, but privacy protection. When the mandatory reporting order is issued, those on the list will be the first to receive letters from the Treasury. Don't make yourself an easy target. The executive order is signed. The legal framework is complete. The debt is at an irreversible level. The $20,000 Oz plan is not a dream. It is the system's only exit strategy. You are standing at a historical crossroads. One path leads to compliance and impoverishment. The other leads to preparation and prosperity. The government has their plan. The question is, do you have yours? Do not wait until the news anchor announces a state of emergency. By then, every exit will be blocked. Act today. Share this video with those you care about because knowledge is the only armor we have in this financial war. I will see you in the next video where I will update you on every micro move of this plan.